First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's Nick Wright. Chris Caney joining us this morning. Good morning, Chris.
How you doing?
Man, Friday morning comes at you fast when you're up late Thursday night watching football. We got a lot to cover today. Week 12 in the NFL started last night. That is where we start this morning. Let's get right to it. They call it Thursday Night Football. That's when it happens. Indy in Houston to face the Texans. A lot on the line for these two division rivals. Deshaun Watson coming off a terrible loss last week to Baltimore. He redeemed himself last night for the most part. Threw for 298 yards, including 2 touchdowns to the always consistent DeAndre Hopkins. So the Texans beat the Colts. They now sit in first place in the AFC South. Nick, what did last night's win mean for the Houston Texans?
Well, it's an enormous win in the division. If they lose the game, they're not only a game back, but the Colts would have swept them in a year where Troy and Joe did a good job explaining this on the broadcast, where the Texans have pushed all their chips to the middle of the table saying we can win right now. We've got a superstar quarterback on his rookie contract, where they thought they were going to have multiple superstars on defense. Obviously, Watt's injury changes that. DeAndre Hopkins continues to make the case that he might be the best receiver in football. So a loss last night to drop to 6-5 with the Patriots looming next week would have been absolutely devastating for them. With that said, I wasn't overly impressed by what we saw from them. I wasn't overly impressed by the game plan. I picked the Colts to win, and I was wrong, and I got to own that. But this was a game where it felt to me, Canty, the Texans could have whatever they wanted down the field, and they only took those shots when they absolutely had to. It's like, all right, we've had a 3-and-out. We can't get the run game going. I guess we'll let our 2 best players get involved in the game. Will Fuller was unguardable throughout the game, and then DeAndre Hopkins was one play he just broke wide open in a coverage bust, and the other play he made a great DeAndre Hopkins fingertip catch in the end zone. So, listen, Deshaun was very good aside from the pick. DeAndre was DeAndre. The Texans' passing game should be its strength. I wish someone would tell the coaching staff that. With all that said, and T.Y. Hilton said as much after the game, if T.Y. Hilton was dealing with a lower body injury, he looked like he was dealing with a hands injury. If he could make one of his 2 catches that were critical drops, I think we're talking about a different outcome. But he dropped the passes, DeAndre Hopkins made the catches, and the Texans take the lead in the division.
Yeah, that was the difference in the game. You're going back to the 3rd and 4 at the end of the third quarter for the Colts. T.Y. drops it on that deep out.
Yep.
And then on the first possession in the fourth quarter, he drops another one on 3rd and 4 where he's got it in his hands
and he took
it gets
it on
knocked
himself.
out by the
He
DB.
said afterwards, it's all on me. Forget injuries, forget anything. That was on me.
Well, yeah, it's on him. But, I mean, clearly you could see that the Colts were dealing with some deficiencies, some medical issues. They missed Marlon Mack, even though Jonathan Williams stepped in and did a serviceable job. There's a difference not having him in the backfield. And, of course, T.Y. with the calf injury. And then Jacoby Brissett. I mean, it was clear throughout that entire game that left knee was still bothering him and that ligament sprain. So, I mean, I don't want to make excuses for the Colts, but they were clearly hampered by the injuries. That being said, the Texans weren't able to have a dominant performance in a gotta-have-it divisional game. And, Nick, you nailed it on the head when you talked about the urgency that this team has approached the 2019 season with, because they've gone all in. The draft capital that they used to acquire Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills and Jerrion Conley. I mean, you're talking about them burning first and third round picks for the next 2 drafts. So Bill O'Brien understands that all the pressure is on him to be able to deliver this season. And if this team didn't make it into the playoffs, that would be a problem. Last night, at least that win allows them to keep that dream alive.
I don't know if the better team won last night, but the Texans are coming off a terrible loss last week. As you said, it was certainly not a dominant win this week. I mean, we know what, Deshaun Watson can do. He didn't look spectacular last night, and he obviously looked terrible last week. What is the ceiling for this Texas team after what you've seen the last 2 weeks?
The same ceiling it has been every year since the franchise came into existence in the early 2000s. Win a first-round playoff game in the wild card weekend, almost assuredly in that 3 o'clock window against of the 4 playoff games that weekend, the one people think there's going to be the least interest in, and then get crushed in round 2. Whether they are the number 1 wild card team or the divisional champion out of the AFC South, their absolute ceiling is they can play Buffalo or this Indy team or the Steelers if they get hot, or the Raiders in round 1 in Houston, maybe win that game. Now, last year against the Colts, they lost that game. A couple years ago, they got blanked 30-0 in that wild card weekend game. Maybe win that game and then play a really good team coming off a bye and get annihilated, which is why, to me, this Texans team ranks among the teams I'm most disappointed in thus far this season. You have all the components that you should need to be right there with Baltimore, Kansas City as the teams that are trying to chase and catch New England. But I don't know why anyone would have any faith that if Baltimore and New England get the byes, which it looks like they will, the Texans could go into either of those buildings and forget win, even present a real challenge for those opponents, even though both of those teams have issues of their own. So I don't want to rain on the Texans because they did get a critical win last night, but not that dissimilar to my hometown Chiefs a week ago or Monday night. Yeah, you got a big win that you had to have, but how did you look when you got it? Style points matter in projection, not in the standings, but in projecting what they will be. I was not overly impressed with the Texans struggling with a Colts team that clearly was not at their best.
Yeah, nor should you be impressed with what they did last night. I think the biggest reason why we don't have a lot of confidence that they could go on the road in the divisional round and beat the Baltimore Ravens or the New England Patriots is just because they're going to be at a deficit when it comes to coaching. I mean, you bring it up every single game the Texans played, the game management by Bill O'Brien. Last night he gets bailed out by the referees with that Deshaun Watson fumble that the referees didn't necessarily catch. And it was a situation where he called timeout and gave them extra time.
Gave them a chance. It would have been,
review it.
If people didn't stay up late, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ken. I want people to understand. The Texans are running out the clock. All they have to do is not turn the ball over, and the Colts are going to, if they get the ball back, get it back with 10 seconds left. Deshaun fumbles. Darius Leonard makes a great play.
Great play.
And I thought Darius Leonard pretty clearly recovered the fumble with one arm and signaled to the refs with the other, I have the football. The referees saw it a different way, but it's within 2 minutes. It's the ability for it to be reviewed. It's not going to be reviewed. And then Bill O'Brien calls timeout to give him an extra 2 minutes to potentially review it instead of just snapping the ball. Now, it never got reviewed, but that could have been one of the biggest coaching gaffes of the season, and it could have flipped this entire division on its head.
But when we talk about games where the pressure and the magnitude of it is spotlighted, I mean, clearly this was one of those games. Bill O'Brien always seems to have one of those coaching decisions that makes you scratch your head, and that's why you can't trust him, especially in a head-to-head matchup with a John Harbaugh or a Bill Belichick.
All right, so the Texans get the win over the Colts. They're now first place in the AFC South at 7-4. On to America's Game of the Week, Cowboys and Patriots from what will be a cold and rainy, maybe even a snowy Foxborough on Sunday. A matchup with the team with the most yards on offense in Dallas and the team that's allowed the fewest yards on defense in New England. As we sit here this morning, Patriots are a touchdown favorite. So, Nick, how did the Cowboys pull off the upset on Sunday?
Before I answer, let me be very clear. I'm explaining how they can pull off the upset. I am not picking the upset. I picked the Patriots to lose the last 2 weeks. I was right in one. I was very wrong against Philadelphia. I'm not picking the Cowboys to beat them.
But if they're going to.
And with that said, they do have a viable path. This isn't the Patriots playing the Jets a few weeks ago. This isn't a game where if the Patriots lost, you would be absolutely gobsmacked by it. I do expect them to win, but we know what the Cowboys need to do. Zeke needs to have the type of game he had a few weeks ago against Philadelphia. He needs to be getting 5 yards a clip, score a touchdown, be the engine that drives their offense, and that is not an indictment on Dak. It is in a league of matchups, even though the Cowboys have a statistical top 3 passing offense, the Patriots have the number 1 pass defense by a mile, so you have to lean on Zeke. And on the other side of the ball, Mohamed Sanu is not going to play, it would appear, and Philip Dorsett might not play. That would mean Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry, who I believe their combined age is almost equal to Tom Brady's actual age. Those 2 guys in Edelman are going to be your weapons on the outside. Dare them to beat you. Play man-to-man across the board against those guys and heat up Tom Brady. Michael Bennett, Robert Quinn, DeMarcus Lawrence, go eat. That's, to me, the way the Cowboys win this football game. They slow the game down or speed it up, if you want to look at it that way, as far as keep the clock ticking by running the football, and you attack Tom Brady and say, hey, if N'Keal Harry can beat us, and if you have enough time to throw the ball 40 yards downfield, we'll tip our cap to you, but we don't think you can do it. You don't put put the game in Dak Prescott's hands and you don't allow the Patriots to try to get their run game, which is something they've leaned on, not to the same success last year, but they've tried to lean on offensively. You don't let them get that going. That's the Cowboys' path if they're going to pull off this upset.
Yeah, that's their path, but Bill Belichick is not going to let that happen. He's going to put the game on Dak Prescott's right shoulder. I mean, Dak is coming off of the best 3-game stretch of any Cowboys quarterback in history, 1,100 yards passing. But, I mean, if Bill Belichick had it in a perfect world, he'd rather Dak throw for 300 yards than allow Ezekiel Elliott to go for over 125 yards on the ground, because number 21 can beat you. And so when you have the best secondary in the National Football League, I think it's going to come down to those Cowboys receivers being able to win in one-on-one coverage, because that the Patriots are going to stack the line of scrimmage. It's going to be 7- and 8-man boxes. Can your receivers win their one-on-one matchups against Stephon Gilmore and Jason McCourty and Devin McCourty? Can you win? I think that's what it'll come down to. And on the other side of this matchup with the Dallas Cowboys defense, their guys have to be able to hold up in one-on-one situations and give them enough time up front to be able to hunt Tom Brady. I think that's how the Cowboys try to neutralize that Patriots offense. Hasn't been a great Patriots offense, but the one thing you can't allow that group to do is to be able to have some balance and being able to run the football. So I look for the Dallas Cowboys to try to keep that running game for the Patriots in check, not let that offensive line, with hopefully the addition of Isaiah Wynn, get that ground game going. If you can make them one-dimensional, I think that gives you an opportunity for Michael Bennett and DeMarcus Lawrence to get after Tom Brady.
I know you like the Patriots in this one. Where do you stand on Tom Brady coming into it? After the couple of weeks that he's had, do you feel like we'll see a different Tom Brady come Sunday?
No. Right, Tom Brady, maybe he has a magic playoff activation button he can press. And I don't even say that sarcastically. He might. Like, Tom Brady has been so bad when pressured this year that maybe it's because this is just where he is, and maybe it's because he has made the somewhat logical decision that our defense is so good, our schedule is so soft, our path to a bye in the playoffs, even if it ends up being the 2 seed, is so fortuitous that the only way this season goes totally awry is if I get hurt. Is if I get dinged, if I go into the playoffs not healthy. So once the playoffs get here, I'm going to stand in the pocket. I'm going to, take some hits while I release the football. But right now, he's not doing that. And he sure as hell isn't doing it. He didn't do it in a game against Baltimore that could have basically locked up the 1 seed. He ain't going to do it in a cross-conference game that if the Patriots lose, they can recover from. So no, I don't think the Patriots, the reason I think they're going to win is not because all of a sudden Tom Brady, it's like, oh, it's the stretch run. We're going to see a better version of Tom Brady. We are either going to see this version of Tom Brady, who is a right now slightly below average NFL quarterback, all year, including the postseason, or all through the regular season. One of those two. It's not going to shift, around Thanksgiving, at least to my eye. I don't think Belichick and Josh McDaniels' game plan is going to be, Tom, this is the game we need you to throw for 350. And I think that would be a faulty game plan, because the Cowboys, while their defense, you can argue, has been a bit of a disappointment, one thing they have been able to do since Bennett's been there is create pressures on the quarterback. They haven't turned all those into sacks, but they've been able to get pressure on the quarterback. So no, I don't think Brady all of a sudden is going to be great this weekend.
No, I don't think he's going to all of a sudden flip a switch and play at an all-pro level, especially with the weapons or lack thereof that he has to work with. I mean, they're still kicking the tires on whether or not Antonio Brown might be a viable option. So clearly this offense is not going to be a juggernaut. But the one thing that Tom Brady understands is that with his defense, he doesn't have to take a whole lot of chances. The worst thing that he can do is turn the football over and give the Dallas Cowboys offense field position and extra possession. So I think if you starve that Cowboys offense and you force them to drive the length of the field, going up against that Pats defense, that's going to be really hard to do.
And, Jenna, what have we talked about that has bedeviled the Cowboys all year long early in games? They're awful starts, right?
Sometimes you ask and I'm supposed to answer. Sometimes I don't know if it's rhetorical. I got nervous.
Well, that one
felt
right
like
there,
a rhetorical right there.
It did? Okay,
full transparency just for a moment. Yeah. I was going to have you answer, but I realized I didn't set it up well enough that I wasn't certain if you were going to say what I wanted you to say, so I answered for you. It's the slow starts.
Welcome in, audience.
It's the slow starts. It's the 3 points in the first half against New Orleans. It's down 31-3 to Green Bay. It's down 14-0 to Minnesota. Down 7-0 hell
in the first quarter
to Detroit. I wasn't even going to include that. That's a great point. You cannot fall down to the Patriots. The number that Dusty found for us earlier this week that is, of all the Patriot crazy stats, and they have some great ones. They've been to a conference championship game every year this decade. That's pretty good. They've had a bye every year this decade. That's pretty good. But the fact that the New England Patriots, since Brady's taken over as quarterback, 105 times, they have been at home and had a lead at the half, and they are 104-1. Is one of the craziest stats. Not a 10-point lead at half.
That's crazy.
Not their, you know what I mean? Not they win the turnover. That's the type of number, if you win the turnover battle in the NFL by 4, you're supposed to be like 104-1. It's been 20 years of teams going to Gillette or even whatever the previous stadium was called, and if you are losing at halftime, you have lost the game. It's over. And so for the Cowboys, it's one thing. No team is built to come back from 14 points. I get it. But you can't come back from 3 points down in that building against this team for 20 years. And so a fast start for the Cowboys might be the biggest key to this game if they're going to have any chance of pulling off the upset.
And if everything is equal, where's the one advantage that the Patriots have far and away over the Cowboys? Rhetorical. Bill Belichick. The coaching advantage is definitely going to go the way.
Long day at work, tough day at school, still stuck at the office? Treat yourself to the meal you deserve on demand from your favorite restaurant. Restaurants come to you with DoorDash. DoorDash connects you to all your favorite restaurants in your city. Ordering is easy. Just use the DoorDash app and choose what you want to eat, and your Dasher will bring it to you wherever you are. Not only is that burger place you love on DoorDash already, but over 310,000 other amazing restaurants are too. DoorDash connects you with door-to-door delivery in over 3,300 cities and all 50 states across the United States and Canada. Order from your local go-tos or choose from your favorite chains like Chipotle, Wendy's, Chick-fil-A, and the Cheesecake Factory. Right now, our listeners can get $5 off their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code FTF. That's $5 off your first order when you download the DoorDash app from the App Store and enter promo code FTF. Again, that's promo code FTF for $5 off your first order from DoorDash. Back to the show.
All right, and on Sunday, 1 p.m. on Fox, Carson Wentz and the Eagles hosting Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Big game for Philly if they want to keep pace with those Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. Nick, who wins this NFC showdown? Seahawks or Eagles?
No, this one, the problem for this one is it seems to me so obvious, and it seems like all the indicators. Seattle coming off a bye. Seattle historically against Philadelphia. Seattle this time of year. Seattle is the healthier team. Seattle's the team that's playing. And then I look at the point spread and I see, wait, Seattle's getting 1.5? It's the type of thing where it's like, what am I not understanding here? Oh, yeah, by the way, the most important as far as wins, losses, Philadelphia Eagle over the last 3 seasons. Not the quarterback, so I'm win a Super Bowl without their quarterback. They've interchanged a lot of parts. Lane Johnson, he might not be playing in this football game. We have seen Carson Wentz be one guy with his all-pro right tackle and one guy without him. So I still am going to go, even though maybe I'm being tricked here, I'm still going to go with Seattle. I think Seattle has been the clearly better team throughout the year. I think Seattle is a team that actually can win. I don't think they will, but can win the Super Bowl. They also know they have the opportunity for the first time all year to be in first place in their division after Sunday evening. Mm-hmm. If San Francisco loses, Seattle wins, all of a sudden it's like, wow, it went that quick from the Niners being one of the last undefeated teams in football to wait. We're the 5 seed right now, and so I like Seattle. I also like that what Seattle has been building towards throughout the year as far as starting to fully unleash Russell Wilson the way I wished they would have in the playoff game last year against Dallas. That playoff game could have gone a different way. Philadelphia, meanwhile, to me, Canty, still seems like a team that is searching for who it is and what it does best. So for all those reasons, even though there's a West Coast team going east, for an early kick, I still like the Seattle Seahawks.
Well, here's the problem with the Philadelphia Eagles. They don't really have an explosive skill position player. I mean, you have so many guys out of the lineup. Deshaun Jackson is out out for the season. Miles Sanders has been dealing with some nicks and bruises here. Jordan Howard was out last week. Alshon Jeffrey was out last week. So those guys, they're practicing on a limited basis. I don't know to what capacity they're going to be effective in Sunday's matchup. But in looking at this Seattle Seahawks team, the fact that they are traveling west to east, that does give me a little bit of concern. The fact that Jadeveon Clowney's dealing with something, Tyler Lockett is dealing with something. Those are key pieces on that team. And so I believe in Russell Wilson and his ability to have late game magic if we're talking about a one-possession game, which I'd probably be led to believe since both teams have struggled on the offensive side of the ball. But I look at this Seattle Seahawks team, and it feels like the kind of game where they could have a letdown, especially after the big win that they had going into the bye week. And then, of course, understanding where the Philadelphia Eagles are at as well. The Philadelphia Eagles are one of those teams that's just maddening because every time you get ready to discount them, they come up with a big win, whether it was earlier in the season against Green Bay or it was against the Buffalo Bills. Just when you're ready to say that they're not in the playoff picture, they come up with a big win. So it'd be interesting to see how this game plays out. I want to say the Seahawks get the win, but I don't know. This Philly team still feels like it's dangerous because they're desperate.
Oh, surprising answer from both of you. But all the reasons you gave why Seattle should win are probably the reasons why the Packers should have beaten the Eagles when they played at Lambeau. Eagles somehow, some way put together a fantastic game plan and won that game. I'm just wondering who you think of these two is the more talented team.
At the beginning of the year, I would have said Philadelphia, but at this point, it's Seattle.
Really?
Yes, because I don't define talent. Like, is it your Madden rating or is it how well you actually play throughout the year?
We talk about how much Russell Wilson does without a very talented team at every position.
Yeah, but he's one of the guys on the team.
Sure.
And so, his talent is so far outweighs what anybody on either side of the ball has. And also, I would add this. I think Philadelphia, this offseason, if it's a long offseason, which even if they win the division, I think it's going to be because this season, barring a miraculous turnaround, is going to be a disappointment from where preseason expectations were. They could take a page out of Russell Wilson's book as far as how to make it happen with mediocre wide receivers. Now, I know Tyler Lockett's numbers the last 2 years have been absolutely sensational. So much of that is because of Russell Wilson. DK Metcalf fell to the second round in the draft despite those eye-popping combine photos because he right now is very limited in what he can do as a wide receiver. Will Dissly, who was really popping onto the scene the first month of the year, popped his Achilles, and now they are on their second and third tight ends. And Russell Wilson still finds a way to make things happen. There are no excuses of, we don't have enough receiving talent. Russell would love to have a Zach Ertz. He ain't got no Zach Ertz. Carson Wentz has had that. I know everyone's like, he doesn't have Deshaun Jackson. When's the last time Russell Wilson had a Deshaun Jackson?
When was the last time Carson Wentz had a Deshaun Jackson?
No, I understand, but Russell Wilson's going to win or either first or second in league MVP despite having limited weapons. Carson Wentz, we say, Nelson Aguilar dropped the pass, and they're dealing with these injuries. And some of that is, and a big part of the reason Philadelphia was the preseason pick a lot of us had them as at least being a top 2 seed in the NFC was, they're going to have near MVP level play from their quarterback. Kenny, they've gotten nothing close to that so far this year. And that, as much as the injuries, is a huge factor as to why they are where they are.
Yeah, they're not getting the production that they thought they would when they gave Carson Wentz that contract extension. But, in looking at the comparison between the two quarterbacks, I think it's a little unfair just because Russell Wilson's at a different phase in his career than Carson Wentz is. And you would think, based on the experience that he's had, he'll have more of an edge in terms of being a force multiplier with limited weapons. I think if Carson Wentz, if we're talking about him being healthy enough to be able to be the starting quarterback for the Eagles as long as Russ has been with the Seahawks, then maybe you're talking about a quarterback that's capable of doing more with the current group of skill position players that he has.
They get ready to face the Cowboys on Sunday. They do so with a dire need for more help at that wide receiver position. They had Antonio Brown, but released him 2 months ago. This week, Brown tweeted an apology to the Patriots for his behavior. Now, former tight end Christian Furious says the team has, quote, kicked the tires on actually bringing Brown back. Nick, how badly do the Patriots need to bring AB back?
They need an injection in the offense, and right now, if you're looking around, the available places for it, he's the only one. They traded a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu. He's injured now. And by the way, you overpaid because you had a desperate need. It's no disrespect to Mohamed Sanu, but
he was the third option with the Atlanta Falcons offense.
He was the third option with the Atlanta Falcons offense. No team in the league values holding on to those second-round picks so they can then flip them for future first on draft day or move back and acquire extra picks than the Patriots. The Patriots, one of the keys to this dynasty, other than Tom Brady, obviously, is that Belichick has understood the draft is a lottery. Nobody knows the answer, so just get as many tickets as possible. He traded away one of his prime tickets to get Mohamed Sanu. He used one of those, his most prime ticket this past year to draft N'Keal Harry. N'Keal got hurt. Mohamed Sanu's now hurt. Yeah, they need him. Of course they need him. This is why, despite the vile allegations against AB, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick wanted to keep him 2 months ago. 2 months ago, they were like, we need him. Whatever he's doing on his phone is not distracting us during practice and during the games. We need him. And if you're the Baltimore Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Houston Texans, you are hoping and praying they do not get him. Because however limited Brady has been this year, AB can do everything a wide receiver needs to do at a high level. You can say, okay, so he's not going to be, Brady can't get him the ball deep down the field. That's fine. Run a choice route. You and Edelman on the field at the same time. Defenses are going to say, like they were for that first half of the game was against Miami.
Yep.
Miami, they're going to have no idea how to cover you. So I would argue, Canty, they desperately need him, which is why, despite all the other nonsense, they wanted to keep him initially, and it would appear they're at least considering him right now.
Yeah, that offense has got to have to kick it in high gear if they want to get where they want to go, which is competing at a championship level. When you look at their primary competition in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs, those are two top 5 scoring offenses. So you know you're going to have to be able to put up points no matter how good your defense is. And that has to be a concern for Bill Belichick in terms of where he's going to go for production in the passing game. You know they're going to try to stay balanced and being able to run the football, but in a gotta-have-it situation, who's the receiver that you can rely on? I think everybody knows that Tom Brady trusts Julian Edelman, but I can't say for a fact that he trusts any of those other guys in the receiving corps. And so that becomes a problem. I think Antonio Brown goes a long ways to giving them an answer in terms of somebody that can be a viable option, somebody that can consistently win in one-on-one coverage, somebody who you know the moment is not going to be too big for. So I look at this situation and not trying to be dismissive of the Colts, Texans, Steelers, and the Raiders, but those aren't teams that the New England Patriots are looking at. They're looking at the Ravens, they're looking at the Chiefs, and they're saying, how can we keep pace with those offenses? How can we score enough points to be able to win those games if we match up against those two teams?
And I would add another list of teams that they're looking at whoever's coming out of the NFC. The Patriots are not in the business of getting to the Super Bowl. They're in the business of winning Super Bowls. They're the only team in football that could finish second, and it feels disappointing given their run of success over the last 20 years. So, yeah, it's okay. So to get to the Super Bowl, you have to beat either Baltimore or Kansas City, potentially both, depending on how the bracket falls. And then whatever team comes out of the gauntlet in the NFC, be it the Packers, be it the Saints, be it the Seahawks, be it the Niners, the Vikings, all those teams except for San Francisco, to me, really scares you with their weapons on the outside. So how are you going to be able to match points? Because if the Patriots do get to the Super Bowl, here's one thing I'm very confident in. 13 points ain't going to be enough to win it this year.
Not this time.
You're not going to be facing the lesser version of the Rams that you were last year, no matter how great the Pats defense is. So for all those reasons, that's why I agree with you, they would even be considering this.
I have such a hard time believing a team is going to sign Antonio Brown after what we've already seen this season. But you guys seem to think that it is a possibility. Whether it happens,
I don't know that it's going to happen. I'm just simply saying if it were to happen, listen, I don't hide this. I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan. If the Patriots were to sign Antonio Brown, I would be really, really bummed out. If you're in Baltimore right now and you get the tweet from Jay Glazer that says the New England Patriots are signing Antonio Brown, you're like, really?
Why? Can anyone beat the Patriots if the Patriots get Antonio Brown?
Well, I think all of a sudden, their biggest weakness becomes mitigated enormously. Mm-hmm. Right now, their biggest weakness, would you agree, is their passing game?
Their passing game.
And you're adding a receiver that not only is he one of the best in the world at what he does, even in his very limited time with New England, but you are adding a receiver. You don't need a 5-step drop for Antonio to kill you.
No.
You don't need the offensive line to all of a sudden get way better. There are certain guys that, okay, he's great, but you need time to throw. He needs his best asset is his downfield speed. That's what Philip Dorsett's is, by the way. He's also potentially not going to play this week. Antonio can beat you that way. He can beat you on the off-schedule play. He can also beat you on a quick slant, like Odell can. I don't think they'd become unbeatable, Jenna, but I think they would shore up their single biggest weakness with the single best person available to shore up that weakness.
Yeah, what AB does is makes that offense that much more dynamic because he's the threat that's outside of the numbers that can beat you down the field. But, Jenna, I'm right there with you. I just have a hard time believing that this is going to happen. I said it when the Patriots made the move to bring over AB the first time this year. I said if it doesn't work out,
he's done for
he's probably done this year, and it'd be hard to see him getting back in the National Football League. I just don't see that working out. He said some things on his way out the door, especially about the owner, Robert Kraft, that are hard to walk back at this point.
And he said some things about the NFL, which also surprised me that he... Back here, first things first, we're now joined by 10-year NBA vet Ryan Hollins. Hey, Ryan.
What up,
man?
Good to see you.
What's going on?
I'm no longer the tallest person on set.
No, you are not.
Ryan Hollins becomes the second tallest guest we've ever had, behind only David Robinson.
What about
David Robinson might not be a footer now.
He's not
Shaq, you're right.
Shaq,
Hold on, Shaq. My bad, Jenna. I forgot about Shaq.
How tall are you?
I'm 7 feet, man. Legit
Adam's like 7'1", man. I'm telling you.
Admiral 7'1"?
Yeah, man.
I thought he about like 6'10".
It's funny that NBA players always have
Yeah,
a little...
he's an NBA 7 feet. That's
throws on a few
NFL
inches or
6.
take off a few inches.
Good to see you, man.
The NBA's putting their best foot forward tonight with the much-anticipated matchup of the Rockets and Clippers. Russ and Harden against Paul George and maybe even Kawhi Leonard, if we're lucky. Rockets in third place out west, Clippers right behind him. And while it is still early, we could learn a lot after tonight. Ryan, let's start with you. Which of these teams has a better chance of winning the West? Clippers or Rockets?
This is by far the Clippers. I thought this was like a trick question. Was this like, where were the Lakers involved in this? And I know you're fired up. Ultimately, I know the Rockets won their first matchup. And I know that, the Clippers were a little off. But ultimately, this Clippers team is still built for success. You're not seeing the best basketball from the Clippers so far. And there's 3 reasons why you have to believe in the Clippers as far as a championship contender. 1, they're versatile. They can guard multiple defenders. Kawhi, Paul George, Harkless. There's a number of guys who can go. Patrick Beverly. We can go down the list. 2nd, they can close out basketball games. Chris, you know it. At the biggest stages in the playoffs, it's one with star power. Paul George can go out and get you a big shot. We don't need to question Kawhi Leonard, and Lou Williams will hit the big one, and Patrick Beverly will make the shots after shot when needed. Now, let's look at the Rockets. I like the Rockets. I appreciate their duo, but they're a bit of a wild card if we're talking about contenders because you got to question Russell Westbrook, my little brother, his outside shooting. Clint Capella, when they start switching things later in the playoffs, how effective is he going to be? And guys like P.J. Tucker who can play, but is P.J. Tucker going to hit enough shots to beat you? So if we're talking about actually coming out of the Western Conference, I don't give that to the Rockets quite yet, Nick.
So here's why it's not a trick question and why I totally disagree with you. Is these two teams are actually much more similar than people give them credit for. They are both teams that have an outstanding top 5. Now, it's not always their starting 5, like Lou Williams comes off the bench. But the Clippers' top 5 of Paul George, Kawhi, Trez Harrell, Lou Williams, Patrick Beverly, that'll be their closing 5. That is an outstanding top 5. The Rockets' top 5 of Russ, Harden, Eric Gordon, when he gets back, he just had knee surgery, so you have to understand with the Rockets, whatever they've been, Eric Gordon before the year clearly had the knee injury, was playing terribly, had the knee surgery, and we haven't seen him at full strength this season. P.J. Tucker, who is the number 1 corner three-point shooter over the NBA in the last 3 years, including this season. And then Clint Capella, who happens to be playing the best basketball of his life, 5 straight 20-rebound games. And after those 5, a lot of question marks. I know the Clippers got some good names in Harkless and Landry Shamet and Patrick Patterson, but up to this point, those guys have not produced. Up to this point, all those guys are struggling this season. JaMychal Green also add him to that list. So 5v5, it's very close. But here's what I know.
How about playoff 5v5?
Yeah,
You're talking regular season 5v5.
Absolutely. In playoff 5v5. So Paul George, as great as he was last regular season, the last few playoffs, his play has fallen off. Similar, by the way, to Russell Westbrook's. So then it's a Harden versus.
What system they playing?
Well, in OKC is your point.
Freelance, wide open, no discipline.
But the
Doc
problem
Rivers
is
gonna
with the
change
Clippers
things.
the problem with the Clippers is twofold. One is it is projection entirely because we've never seen them play together. And the other one is we know, for good or for bad, James Harden is going to be there in the postseason. We have no idea what's going on with Kawhi Leonard. Are you confident Kawhi is going to play tonight? Because I'm not. He played one game in a week, and he was out of gas by the fourth quarter. He played last Wednesday against the Rockets. They lost, you're right. One game does not make a season. Let's pretend that didn't even happen. And then this past Wednesday night, in the great game against Boston, he played 22 minutes in the first three quarters after not playing a week of basketball and was out of gas by the fourth quarter in overtime. What is going on with Kawhi Leonard is the biggest question in the NBA right now. And to say that he's going to be fine come the playoffs, I have no evidence of that, Cam.
Well, he might not be fine come the playoffs, but I mean, as long as he's going to be available for him, they're still going to be a contending team. I mean, we saw it last year. He was dealing with something in the playoffs, but there was no better individual player throughout the entire playoffs last year than Kawhi Leonard. You saw the difference that he was able to make hitting that shot over Joel Embiid to help his team advance to the next series. But, I mean, in looking at his imprint on this Clippers team, you saw it in the Wednesday night game against the Boston Celtics. He has the dunk where he's literally hanging on the rim, and then he blocks Kemba Walker's last-second three-point attempt. So Kawhi has shown that even with whatever he's dealing with, he can still have an impact on the game. Now, Wednesday also happened to be the first time that we saw him and Paul George on the court for the first time, and you just have to think that throughout the course of this season, this team will develop their chemistry on the defensive end. And for me, if you're trying to come out of the Western Conference, that's where it has to start. When you look at what LeBron and AD are doing with the Lakers, it's the best defensive team in the league. I mean, in order to be able to compete with those guys, you are going to have to be able to stop somebody. That's why I'm hesitant to say that the Rockets really have a shot at being able to be the team to come out of this Western Conference, just because the Clippers, and I know it's projection, but the Clippers, because of their versatility on the defensive side, and the Lakers have a better shot because they can stop people from scoring.
Nick, I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't concerned with Kawhi's knee. But what makes me feel confident is that Kawhi gets to that stage in an athlete's career where you know your body. You know, if I give it 110% before a back-to-back, I'm not going to be too good to you later on. He knows he's got to manage his way through the season. He's already come in, Chris, with a plan of, hey, I'm going to load manage. Who cares what anybody else thinks? Now, ultimately, when he's played, I agree, he hasn't been that impressive, but I want to see Kawhi late in June. I want to see him in the playoffs. I'm not necessarily looking to see Kawhi Leonard now. Now, as far as matching up in the playoffs, you brought up Eric Gordon. If Eric Gordon is playing a small forward position for you against a large, dynamic, sizable Clippers team, that's going to be a problem.
So let me address both those points quickly. One is about as long as he performs in May and June, then the regular season won't matter. And I think that's mostly correct. The problem for the Clippers is going into the year, we knew there were 5 outstanding teams in the Western Conference. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, who were the 2 seed last year, the Houston Rockets, who add Russ in place of Chris Paul, and the Jazz, who might have had the best offseason of anyone, not including the teams that added superstars. Adding Conley, adding Boyan, adding
Jeff Green.
Right, and so their starting 5, even though Conley didn't play well to start the year, is out. One of those teams is done after the first round. So the importance of getting a top 3 seed going into the year, I thought was incredibly high. I'm now going to say the importance of getting a top 2 seed, because that 6 seed's going to be the Dallas Mavericks. And the Dallas Mavericks are not going to beat whoever the 3 seed is, but they might have the best player on the court come the playoffs in Luka Doncic. So are the Clippers, by the time they get to the Lakers or the Rockets in the playoffs, if they get there, having probably started the playoffs on the road, if Kawhi's going to play 60-some games, are they going to have expended too much? And the other point is this, because I think the biggest reason people would like the Clippers over the Rockets is, well, Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs versus James Harden in the playoffs. Show Kawhi. Kawhi won Finals MVP last year, right? That's him against the Golden State Warriors. Now, it was a lesser version of the Golden State Warriors with the Warriors. That's a hell of a line. The guy on the right is better in everything but rebounds, right? better shooting percentage even, more points, more assists. Who's the guy on the right? That's in the playoffs against the full-strength Golden State Warriors. So much of narratives, full strength until late in Game 5 when KD goes down. So much of the narrative is based on who won, not necessarily based on how well guys produced. People look at what Kawhi did in the finals as heroic and that James Harden choked again. James Harden was objectively better against a tougher Warriors team in round 2 than Kawhi was in the NBA finals, and we throw it out because the Rockets lost again. That, to me, is not necessarily a fair indicator of who's going to be better come this postseason.
Real quick, here's the difference. Kawhi Leonard is going to give you that in a Game 7 with a game winner. He's going to close that bad boy out, okay? James Harden, we haven't seen it yet. I'm a big James guy. If we want to talk about who's the best player in the NBA right now, I would say arguably is James Harden the last 13 games, averaging about 40 points a game. I wouldn't question that. But we're talking playoffs, Chris. I'm going Kawhi Leonard. It's star power. And if there's a team that I would have to worry about or try to, shake, I would worry about Harden, okay, because of star power in the playoffs. That's a team you wouldn't want to match up with. But I'm not scared about Utah, Denver, Nuggets, whoever.
Yeah, Harden can score at will. I mean, nobody's taking that away from him. I mean, in terms of being able to score the basketball, he might be the best in the NBA right now. But in terms of a player having that clutch factor and a guy that you trust, I'm going to go with the guy that already has 2 finals MVPs with 2 different
Talk
teams.
to him.
Period.
Come on, Chris.
I'm going to go with the guy who I know is actually going to play. And then once I know Kawhi's going to play, listen, he's played 5 games in the month of November. He's shooting 35% this month, with as much rest as anyone could have.
Wait, you're questioning playing in the playoffs or regular season?
I'm questioning what his health is going to be for the rest of his career. That's right now what is in question to me, and I think we have underrated how good that Raptors depth was last year, and we're seeing it with how good they've been throughout this regular season.
That's true.
Fair.
All right. If you're going dress warm, it'll be cold, it'll be rainy, it might even be a little snowy in Foxborough. It's a matchup with the team with the most yards on offense in Dallas and the team that's allowed the fewest yards on defense in New England. And as we sit here this morning, Patriots are touchdown favorites. Nick, how did the Cowboys pull off the upset on Sunday?
Ooh. This is an easy question, but it'll be incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be able to do it. Jason Garrett going to Foxborough in a game the Patriots need, I don't love their chances. But the methodology is quite simple. Run Zeke, then run him some more. On the flip side of the ball, dare these pedestrian Patriot wide receivers to beat you. Dare. Hey, N'Keal Harry, you're going to have your big welcome to the NFL moment with 30 million people watching. Tip our cap to you. Jacoby Myers, you flashed in the preseason, got you a roster spot. You're going to have a great game. Awesome. You're going to be in single coverage all day long, and we are going to heat up Tom Brady. Like that, to me, it's hard to find an argument that there's a different path. Like, I think we're all going to agree to varying levels that that's the way they do it. Now, will they be able to? Are they going to be able to successfully implement that game plan? And are they going to be able to do something so many teams fail to do, which is just don't lose the game in the first 20 minutes.
And that's where Dallas has struggled. They're struggling coming out of the gates, and then they usually pick up steam later. They've been better, the past previous weeks. But teams have had success in stopping, Ezekiel Elliott the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
I think it's important that they come out throwing the ball, showing them that they're willing, and use the pass, the pass to open up the run to kind of loosen that defense up, because they're going to crowd that line of scrimmage and try and get Dak into some obvious passing situations and force him to throw into some tight windows. You got Gilmore. I love that matchup between Gilmore and Cooper. You got two competitive guys that can really compete against each other, that play the positions at a high level. But really, I think they're going to have to, this New England offense, you can't be fooled by the trickery. We understand that sometimes you get beat just by you're not really understanding early on in the game conceptually what they're trying to do. They're going to give you their game plan in the first couple of quarters. We don't know if it's going to be they're going to try and drag it out and run the ball and limit the possessions as well, trying to move the chains against this Dallas defense. It's going to be an interesting chess match to see if Garrett can come out with an aggressive game plan to get ahead early to force Tom Brady to throw the ball, because they're just going to try and deconduct you death by 1,000 paper cuts.
It's interesting, Nick, because you talked about the Dallas Cowboys trying to heat up Tom Brady. Now, historically, in the NFL, you don't want to blitz Tom Brady because no quarterback is better against the blitz. He's seen so much football. He has answers for the different looks, the different pressures that you're going to throw at him. But I think the big question is whether whether or not Tom Brady's going to be on the same page with those young receivers that you're talking about, because so much of that relationship depends on trust. And Tom Brady's had a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. So anybody not named Julian Edelman, it's hard to envision that Tom Brady is going to have that same type of connection. So that's one of the things to watch for early, just the receivers' adjustments to that. But as far as the Dallas Cowboys on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, they have to be prepared to be able to sustain drives. Right. I mean, the New England Patriots are not going to do them any favors in terms of giving them field position, because they're not going to make those mistakes. Tom Brady understands their path to victory starts with their defense and special teams, not the offense. So he's not going to force the issue. The only question is whether or not the quarterback on the other side, Dak Prescott, is able to play mistake-free football.
Well, you look how he's been playing the last couple of weeks. He's been carrying his team. You talk about 841 yards passing the ball. It's been more about him. He's making another statement to say, hey, he should be paid or be the highest-paid quarterback in the position.
But look at the last 2 weeks. They barely got out of there against the Detroit Lions, led by Jeff Driscoll, and we know what happened in that Minnesota Vikings game. Point being, we know that Ezekiel Elliott can beat you. The Dallas Cowboys, when they've had a full season of Zeke, they win the division and they host a playoff game. So we understand the importance of Zeke to that team and their overall game plan in terms of how they want to win. If you stop Zeke, the question is, can Dak Prescott deliver against better competition? We have yet to see that.
And there's two, to me, very interesting points to build off what you guys were talking about. One is on the Zeke component. Dak has been the best player in the Cowboys this year. I would bet money Bill Belichick does not think he's the best player on the team.
Of course.
I think that I will, just like we always talk about, Belichick's going to try to take away what you do best. You think he's going to, in this game, say, we're going to try to take away the passing game first, or we're going to try to make sure Zeke doesn't kill us? I think we're going to see that the opponents, the smartest opponents, still fear Zeke more than they fear Dak, and especially given the talent in the Patriots secondary. And one other key component, Jenna, for the Cowboys getting this win. They are statistically top 4 in everything you can find offensively. 4th in points, 1st in yards, 1st in passing, 1st on third down, 1st on fewest sacks. The one area they are not only not top 4, but they're below average, red zone touchdowns. Yep. If they get to the red zone on this Patriot team, and Canty, you have a crazy stat about how few times opponents have been in the red zone against the Patriots this year in Foxborough. Twice. All year. Yeah. All year they've allowed opponents in the red zone in that building 2 times. If they are fortunate enough to be in the red zone multiple times, if those things end up with Brett Maher 31-yard field goals, they are screwed. They absolutely have to be so much better than they've been over the last 3 years on converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns if they're going to pull off this upset.
Look, this is the first game all season where the Cowboys have not been favored coming into a game. Dak Prescott has been lights out the last couple of weeks. Besides the last 2 weeks, Ezekiel Elliott has been playing up to par. They're still only 6-4. There's still something that they're not, and maybe it's the slow start, maybe they're getting outcoached. Whatever it is, for whatever reason, this is a team that has not played up to either their expectations or the talent that's already on their team.
I think that when you go into when you go into a Gillette what the task is, and I think they have a healthy fear, so I think they're going to come out fast. I think this is a game when you know you're going against Tom Brady that you prepare a little differently. I think when they looked at Minnesota, they thought we're at home, we're better than Minnesota. I think that they thought they were better than the Lions. This is an opponent that they think they're punching up at, so I think they're going to come out fast. The issue is, can they sustain and can they make the adjustment to the adjustments? And, you talk about, the Patriots in the red zone. I think it's going to be important that they take shots in the high red zone, because the Patriots are great, especially when you have a lockdown corner, and being able to play in the windows as the field shrinks. So I think they're going to have to take their shots on the 40 at midfield and try and get one of those long touchdown passes, because they're just too good and too disciplined to be able to do that. And we've seen that Dak can make mistakes in the red zone.
All right, who wins the game?
I'm going to go. Listen, I'm going to go with the. It's tough. You know what? I'm going to go with the pick.
You can't pick the Dallas.
I'm going to pick.
Wait for it. I think you're going to do your pick later.
Okay. Last night, Deshaun Watson and the Texans got a crucial win over the Colts. However, the Patriots still loom large over every team in the AFC. Chris Canty the biggest threat to New England in the AFC is blank.
It's got to be the Baltimore Ravens because that's the only team in the conference that I think can challenge for home field advantage throughout. They already have the head-to-head win against them. And the Baltimore Ravens' strength on the offensive side of the ball just so happens to match up well against the weakness of that Patriots defense, which is their front seven and against the run game. So has to be the Baltimore Ravens.
For me, I'm going to go to the Baltimore Ravens again, but it's for a different reason. It's because of their secondary and their ability to bracket Edelman, bracket Sanu if he's healthy, be able to put a big corner on top of on White as well, because we know their front seven isn't good, but they can play complex coverages with the addition of Peters, Carr, Smith, Humphreys. They can do unique coverages, and you saw them do it, in the first matchup when they were bracketing Edelman and Earl Thomas on the other side.
I think the playoffs are going to go through Gillette. And I think Baltimore's, by the way, been the best team in the AFC this year. So I understand all of that. I think if Bill Belichick were forced to answer honestly, the team he would fear the most about coming there and beating them, forcing them into a shootout, is still the Kansas City Chiefs.
Of course you're going to say that.
Well, we saw them last year go to New England, and have, despite playing terribly in the first half, having 2 fourth-quarter leads, defense was not able to hold it. This New England offense not quite as potent. Gronk was key in that game. He doesn't play for them anymore. And we will get to see that game, by the way, here in a couple weeks to see how well the Chiefs match up with New England. I still think they would fear the Chiefs the most, despite what Baltimore did to them a few weeks ago.
Yeah, just to push back a little bit, that Kansas City Chiefs offense, they have trouble being able to close out games because they don't have a consistent presence being able to run the ball, especially in between the tackles. The Baltimore Ravens don't have that problem.
That is absolutely a great point. I still think I'm right.
Yeah. Sunday at 1 on Fox, the Eagles hosting the Seahawks. We know Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson will be crucial to both teams. For Chris Canty, the X factor in this game will be blank.
I'm going to go with DK Metcalf, okay? Another name in this matchup that a lot of people aren't going to be thinking about going into Sunday's game. But DK Metcalf has got 35 catches for 595 yards and 5 touchdowns. But most importantly, 23 catches for first downs. The Seattle Seahawks being able to sustain drives against that Eagles defense. The one place that Eagles defense can get got is in the secondary. I like DK Metcalf being able to take advantage of the mismatch.
I'm going to go Flash Gordon, because when you saw that when he needed to play somebody he can trust with consistent hands on those slants, it was Flash Gordon.
Those 2 third downs against San Francisco.
Right. So when you think about that, Flash Gordon is more sure-handed. He's only going to get more comfortable. Metcalf has too many of the yips sometimes for me, too many drops. He doesn't high point the ball on the big plays. Flash Gordon can make the consistent play in traffic.
I'm going to go with a player that we're not certain is going to play, but if he plays, he's coming off his best game maybe of his career and can be a game record, particularly if Lane Johnson's out, and that player's Jadeveon Clowney. Now, Clowney didn't practice yesterday, but they are coming off a bye. He didn't practice the days leading up to their game against San Francisco. He still had a monster game. He could ruin this game single-handedly for the Philadelphia Eagles, so I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball, say Jadeveon Clowney. That will be the biggest injury designation around 11:30 in the morning on Sunday, whether or not Clowney's going to play in this
football players are always hurt. It's like you play a tough game or something. Move, get off the injury list. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers have a pivotal Week 12 matchup. They face the Niners in San Fran on Sunday night. Candy, the biggest X factor in this game will be blank.
I'm going to go safety Adrian Amos for the Green Bay Packers. You got to be able to control the middle of the field in the passing game. Don't give Jimmy Garoppolo any easy outs. Even if George Kittle doesn't play, Emmanuel Sanders, Deebo Samuels, they're good at going over the middle and being able to provide a target for Jimmy G. I think you have to take the easy throws away from him, force him to be able to beat you outside of the numbers and down the field. That's why Adrian Amos is going to be key in this matchup.
Well, for me, it's going to be Kenny Clark. And when you talk about, the San Francisco 49ers, it begins and ends with the run game. And you got to be physical at the point of attack. We're talking about gap schemes. We're not talking about this fancy, let's go sideways and let's play basketball on the football field. We're talking about smash mouth, check, Kittles, double-double, and it's going to be important for that tackler to let these linebackers be able to go free. We know they have the outside pass rush, but you can't, what we always say, you can't get a sack on a running play, and to be able to get those sacks and be able to get to Jimmy G, you got to be able to get the third down.
If people don't know, Kenny Clark is the Packers' nose tackle. He's
Big I'm sorry, I digress.
No,
he's only 315. He's got to eat some steak.
Sometimes you're too smart for the audience. I'm going to go with the guy that typically X factor, we are talking about a safety or a D tackle. For the Niners, it's their quarterback. If Jimmy Garoppolo plays well, they are the best team in football because of everything else they do. Now, we saw him against Seattle try to throw 7 picks. Against Arizona, he succeeded in throwing 2 in a game they escaped with. Jimmy G is going to throw it to the other team a couple times a game. Question is, will the other team come down with it? If he plays well, they will win, and they will be in position to be the 1 seed. If he doesn't, they're staring at the 5 seed after that great start. So I say Jimmy Garoppolo because, to me, he's the only question mark with the San Francisco 49ers, an otherwise extraordinary team.
Do we know if George Kittle's playing yet?
No, that's game time decision.
Game time decision, yep.
All right, moving on. The
Take him
Cowboys
to the back and make him understand.
Have yet to beat a team that's currently above 500. So a win in New England on Sunday would give them a whole new level of confidence. But Kenny, the team that needs a win the most in Week 12 is blank.
It's got to be the L.A. Rams. I mean, I know they've got a matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. That's not going to be easy, but the playoffs started for them a week ago because you got 2 teams in that division that have 8 or more wins. So, I mean, you have to look at it. It's stiff competition in order to get one of those wild card spots in the NFC. So if the Rams want to keep their playoff hopes alive, they got to win this week.
For me, it's the Philadelphia Eagles because you assume that the Dallas Cowboys are going to lose in Gillette. So then that means if they win, they could be tied for the first place in the division. We know that you're not going to get 2 players from that division into the playoffs because of all the things you just said about, the teams over there at 8-3. We know that Seattle's going to get a wild card. So that means Minnesota may get a wild card. So the best path for you to get into the postseason is to win your division, and it starts this week.
I'm going to go with a team that we know is going to be in the playoffs. The question is, are they going to have a bye? Are they going to be the division winner? Or are they maybe going to be the 5 seed? And that's the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers, as brilliant as they've been, big picture-wise over the last decade, they've only had a bye in the playoffs twice. They haven't had one since 2014. The Minnesota Vikings continue to overachieve and exceed expectations. They are right on Green Bay's heels. If Green Bay wins this game, they are in great position to not only have a bye, to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. If they lose it, they could be on the road in the first round of the playoffs. So Green Bay, their schedule also opens up quite a bit after this week. So I say the Green Bay Packers not only to stay tied for the 1 seed or to get tied for the 1 seed in the NFC, but to get the head-to-head tiebreaker with San Francisco.
Weren't the Packers on the road to start the playoffs when they won a championship?
Yeah, but that was a long time ago, Chris Canty. You're right about that. But that path has been hard for them since.
All right.
Sunday night football now. You got a big one here. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the Bay to face Jimmy G and the 49ers. According to Fox Bet, the Niners are 3-point underdogs in this one. Nick, who wins this game?
Green Bay wins it for a number of reasons. Number 1, I'll just say, is health. I don't know who's going to play for San Francisco. Green Bay, aside from the Devontae Adams injury, which they were able to withstand, they've been one of the healthier, really good teams throughout this season. San Francisco, all of a sudden, listed on the injury report that we don't know who's playing: Emmanuel Sanders, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Dee Ford, Matt Breida, even their kicker. Robbie Gould hasn't practiced yet this week. You are talking about key components, almost all of which on offense, aside from Dee Ford, for a team that already, to me, struggles offensively. Additionally, San Francisco the last 3 weeks starting to look a little leaky. They were dominating Arizona 3 weeks ago. Arizona makes a charge late in the game to cut that to 3. San Francisco escapes. They play Seattle. Seattle had that game won, to me, multiple times. San Francisco could have taken the tie. Foolishly doesn't. They lose that game. And then last week they play Arizona again. And Arizona beat them for 59 and a half minutes. San Francisco got a very beneficial spot, which would have put them in a position to kick a game-tying field goal. Instead, they get a first down, score a touchdown the next play to save that game. Green Bay, on the other hand, is coming off a bye. After they had the bad loss in Week 9 of the season, they turned things back around with the good win in Week 10, and they've got to be saying to themselves, man, it's been a long time since the playoffs went through Lambeau Field. It's been a long time since we didn't have to win 3 games to get to the Super Bowl, only had to win 2. With a win this week, they are in brilliant position to get a bye for all those reasons. And, gun to my head, Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo, I'll always go Aaron Rodgers, even though I know there's a lot of other aspects to it. For all those reasons, I like Green Bay.
Yeah, and you go back to that Week 9 loss that they had against the Chargers, and Aaron Rodgers came out after the game and said he had some issues with the team's travel schedule. schedule and getting in late. I mean, coming off of a bye week, you would think going back out to the West Coast, they would have that on the agenda in terms of making sure that all of those different issues were buttoned up and that the team, from a mental standpoint, is ready to go with their best performance of the season. But, I mean, it's all out there in front of them for the Green Bay Packers. I think this matchup sets up well for them. The one thing that this team has to do is that they have to force this game to be won by Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers.
Yep.
They can't allow the 49ers offensive line and their running game to be the difference. They can't allow them to control the time of possession, eat up the clock, and dictate the complexion of the game. I think that defense's challenge is being able to stop the run with their front seven and then force Jimmy Garoppolo to make plays in the passing game down the field. That's the one question mark that we've had for the San Francisco 49ers this entire season. That's why a lot of people, including you and me, are still skeptical of the 49ers as we inch closer to the postseason. We just don't know what to expect from their quarterback. So to me, if you're the Green Bay Packers, this game is going to hinge on your defense's ability to be able to force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat him. You saw last week that he made the two mistakes in the red zone. He's going to throw the ball to the opposing team. You know that they have the personnel in the secondary to take advantage of it. It's just a matter of making sure the game comes down to that.
We're heading into week 12. The 49ers have one of the best records in the league, if not the best record, tied with the Patriots. And yet the jury's almost still out on the 49ers. So this is going to be a tough stretch for him. They got the Packers, they're at Baltimore, and then they're at New Orleans. So if you want to know who the San Francisco 49ers are, I feel like the next 3 to 4 weeks are going to really give you a good sense. We know who the Packers are.
Listen, they have 6 games remaining, obviously. 4 of them are as difficult as it could be. Green Bay, at Baltimore, at New Orleans, and then the final week of the year at Seattle, a team that already beat them. So I have been skeptical of San Francisco. I think that skepticism is going to prove itself out well-founded over the next month. On the flip side, for Green Bay, a loss in this game to me would be particularly devastating for them. Even though they're 8-2, they'd still be tied for the divisional lead, even assuming that, Minnesota's on a bye, so they would be tied for divisional lead even with the win. Because they have, if we're being honest, underachieved in the decade of Aaron Rodgers. This number is baffling to me, but I promise it's true. Since Aaron Rodgers has been the quarterback, the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers, the 49ers, who in that stretch have gone through a half dozen quarterbacks, nearly as many coaches. They had one good stretch of football. In this, since Rodgers has been the quarterback, they have the same number of first-round buys. They have the same number of conference championship game appearances and the same number of Super Bowl appearances. Now, Green Bay obviously won theirs, San Francisco lost theirs, but it is remarkable that the Niners, who have been in flux seemingly up and down this decade with one period of success under Harbaugh, and the Packers, who have had this whole decade the most talented quarterback arguably ever, that come the postseason and postseason success, it's remarkably similar. If the Packers win this game, they position themselves really well to at least, move into a lead on San Francisco in that regard. If they lose this game, the Niners are the team that once again is looking like they're going to have the bye, while Green Bay is going to be fighting with Minnesota just to win their division.
No, you're absolutely right, but I think the organization underachieving with Aaron Rodgers is why a couple of years ago they moved away from Ted Thompson and went with Brian Gutekunst, the new general manager, and now they have a new head coach in Matt LaFleur, and they're trying to make it work with him. But, I mean, in terms of what this team can be, I don't think we're seeing the best version of the Green Bay Packers. I don't think we've seen it yet, and so there's something to be said for trying to play your best football as you go down the final stretch of the season. I'm looking for the Packers coming off of that bye week to start a run here with the San Francisco 49ers being the first team on deck.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.